Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Before we launch into the podcast, I'd like to tell you about my book, Author Your Life, Become the Hero of Your Story. This is a book for people who are at a crossroads in life and want to make a fresh start. Judging by the fact that you're listening to this podcast, I suspect that you may well be one of those people. This book is going to help you to change your narrative and rewrite the scripts in life that are holding you back. This book covers the latest science and research showing you how to become the person you want to be and live the life that you want to live. I'd like to invite you to get this book not only because I feel it's a great book that's going to help you, but also it's going to support the podcast as well. I love podcasts, but sometimes all of those ads that you get can be really irrelevant and annoying when you just want to listen to a good piece of training or a good interview. So I therefore made the decision with my podcasts that number one, I wanted my podcast to be free so that everyone could listen to it. And number two, that I wasn't going to fund it through all these annoying and irrelevant adverts and commercials. Therefore, if you want to support the podcast and support all the things that I put out there for free, whether it be here on the podcast, my YouTube channel, other areas on social media, then buying a book is going to enable and help that process. So this is what we call a win-win scenario. By buying the book, you help to support my work and all the free stuff that I put out there, and you also get a really transformational book that's going to help you make those changes that you really want in your life. So if you feel you're someone who's at that crossroads in life, you're looking for a new direction, you're looking for a fresh start, then make sure you get this book. Author Your Life, Become the Hero of Your Story is available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Whatever your preferred medium, it's there for you to go get right now. Intimacy. Into me, you see. Intimacy is this idea of having a very close and personal connection with somebody. The idea of feeling very close to someone else and someone else being very close to us. That we know so much about the other person and the other person knows so much about who we are. I'd like to discuss this topic of intimacy today because intimacy is something that I became more aware of recently in my romantic relationship. As many of you know, I recently got married, and me and my wife, we went for our honeymoon in Japan, and we had 2 amazing weeks there. And when we came back, people were asking us, what was your favourite part? What was the best bit? What did you enjoy most? And I must admit, when I first started being asked these questions, I really struggled. I struggled to pick out one defining experience in that trip. There were so many different experiences and so many different types of experiences as well. How do you pick out the excitement of watching a rugby match at the Rugby World Cup to the poignancy of visiting the Peace Memorial at Hiroshima? Both experiences are good, but obviously they're 2 very different types of experiences. What was the pinnacle of the whole trip? And so I was really struggling. I was providing multiple answers, I was providing non-answers. And then one day in a conversation when somebody asked me the question, it hit me. What was the best part of Japan? The best part of Japan was being there for my wife. The best part of Japan was that we had 2 weeks spending every day together, spending all of the day together, having undivided time where we weren't worrying about work, we weren't worrying about business, we weren't worrying about what we needed to do in the house, we weren't worried about cooking our dinner, we weren't worried about commitments, we weren't worried about anything except enjoying what we wanted to enjoy and being in each other's company. And what I recognized was that my favorite part of the honeymoon, my favorite part of going away to Japan was just that I was there with my wife, just that I was there with my best friends, just that I was there with the person I feel most intimate with in the world. And what I realized when I gave this answer was that I had felt so intimate and close with Kerry over those 2 weeks. And it actually made me think of when had we spent that amount of time together in the course of our relationship? Not since maybe we first started dating were we spending that much undivided time, and even then, not spending a whole 2-week block together like that. And I feel over that time, obviously we had the excitement and the thrill of just being married and just taking this new step in our relationship, but actually just spending that time together regardless created a deeper sense of intimacy and connection. Certainly I felt that with Kerry, and I like to think she felt that with me as well. So I wanted to talk about this idea of intimacy today, because intimacy is something that we want in all of our relationships to a certain extent, and in particular, of course, our romantic relationship. The one defining relationship, the person we choose to spend the most time with, the person we want to be with the most. And you know what? Sometimes in romantic relationships, the intimacy fades. Maybe it was once there really strongly, and it's kind of petered out over time. Perhaps the intimacy never really felt there in the first place, or it's never really been there as much as you've wanted it to be in your relationship. Intimacy is something that we have to work on. Intimacy is not an achievement we accomplish. It's a journey we progress on. And you've got to revisit intimacy day after day, week after week, month after month. And I've certainly noticed in my relationship that, there's times where I feel that our intimacy has faded a little bit. There's been peaks and troughs of our intimacy. There's been times where I haven't felt as close, as intimate as maybe other times I have. I've noticed in these periods that there are things that I can do to rekindle some of that intimacy, to bring some of it back again. And that's what I want to talk about today, is how you can foster this intimacy, how you can build that consistency of intimacy so you're enjoying it in your relationship as much as you possibly can. So I've got 3 things to share with you today. The first of which, if you want more intimacy in your relationship, more touch. More physical touch. Let's face it, if we look at the differences in our relationships, the different depths of relationships we have acquaintances, we have friends, we have family, we have romantic partners. One of the characteristics is that the deeper in a relationship we get, the more we touch another person. With an acquaintance, we might just shake hands. With friends, we might pat each other on the back. With family, we might hug. With our romantic partners, we cuddle and we snuggle and we kiss and we hold hands. Look how much more we touch each other as a relationship deepens. So if you want more intimacy in a relationship, start intimating physical touch with your partner more. And there's all sorts of different ways that you can do this. You can hold hands, you can cuddle, you can just touch your partner when you're in the room, just that gentle hand on the shoulder, a gentle hand around the waist. Try and get touching more. Because if we start to delve into the physiology of why touch is associated with deeper relationships, physical touch stimulates our oxytocin. Oxytocin, as you may know, if you watched other videos of mine, or if indeed you just know from general knowledge, oxytocin is our connection chemical. When oxytocin is released, we get that feeling of trust, we get that feeling of rapport, we get that feeling of connection with the people who we are with when we generate that feeling for ourselves. So if you want to feel more intimate, get more of that physical touch. Get that oxytocin moving through your body. Because if there's one guarantee for more connection, more energy, more vigor in your relationship, it's activating that cocktail of oxytocin. Boy, nature has got it figured out. It knows what to do for you. Just allow it to release and you'll feel the benefits. So that's step number 1. Initiate more physical touch. My second suggestion is undivided time. And this goes back to what I was speaking about on our honeymoon. One of the reasons that I felt so intimate and close with Kerry during that 2 weeks is because we were spending so much time together. We were staying in the same room together, we were eating the same meals together, we were traveling to the same places together. Now normally when you're in a relationship, there's periods where you're together and there's periods where you're apart. When each of you are at work, each of you are seeing your individual friends, each of you are just chilling out. One of you might be watching Netflix in one room, another one of you might be reading a book in another room. So you ebb and flow between being together and being separate, being together and being separate. And by the way, that's a sign of a really healthy relationship. If you have a relationship where you are bound together, that's not healthy. That's dependency. And equally, if you've got a relationship where you never spend any time with each other, that's also not healthy. That's independency. You don't want dependency or interdependency. You want interdependency, where you can flow between together, separate, together, separate. Saying this, there's nothing like a big boost for intimacy in having undivided time together. And the problem that we have in a lot of relationships nowadays, and ourselves included, we're not pretending to be the gold standard for relationships here, is that having that undivided time can be difficult. That undivided time can be so precious between your work commitments, between your other life commitments, between all of the busyness and distraction that we have in our lives nowadays. Getting that time together just to be together and focus on just being together in that moment, these are precious times. And if you want an intimate relationship, you've got to fight for those times. You've got to fight for that undivided attention. You've got to commit to saying, these are the times where we're going to make our fullest effort to be together and just be there. So when you're having dinner, be there having dinner with your partner. Don't be sitting there on your phone. Don't be watching television. Don't be working on something while you're eating, for goodness sake. There's a cartoon that I saw, and it's an amusing one. It's this man, and he's at work, and he's thinking of going home and making love to his wife. He goes home, he's making love to his wife, and he's thinking of playing golf the next day. He goes and plays golf the next day, and what is he thinking of? Going to work after the weekend. That man has 3 experiences, all of which are good in their different ways, but he's never there in that moment. His mind is always somewhere else, and you can only enjoy the present by being in the present. So get that undivided time with each other. Whatever you have to do, date nights, Friday night movie night, Sunday brunch, whatever you need to do to get that undivided time with each other, even just for half an hour, that's going to improve your intimacy and the closeness that you have. Finally, suggestion number 3 is compliments. Now, this might seem like such a trivial, basic thing, but so often in our relationships, we get into a habit of taking each other for granted. We start to focus a little bit more on the things that we don't like and the bad aspects of the person that we're with. Let's face it, none of us are in a perfect relationship. There are always flaws and traits and habits in the other person that can irritate us and get to us. Of course, these things happen. We start to focus maybe a little bit more on some of these bad aspects, and we forget about all the good, amazing aspects that made us want to be with that person in the first place. So if you want to feel more intimate and connected with the person you're in a romantic relationship with, start focusing back in on those good traits. And the easiest way to do this is to notice them with compliments. Dish out the compliments. Now, don't do it in such a repetitive, forced way that it becomes ingenuine and unauthentic, but start to take notice more of the good aspects of the person that you're with, the home that you have together, the lifestyle that you create together. Start to find more of those compliments, and there's plenty out there. The person that you are with is an amazing person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be with them. There are so many things about them that you admire, that you enjoy, that you resonate with. Start to notice these in compliments. Think about when you receive a compliment. How good does that feel? Your boss compliments you for the good job that you did. A friend compliments you for how you helped them out of a difficult jam. And think about when you're first in the dating game, if somebody compliments you on how good you look, how attractive you are, man, does that feel nice? Well, get some of that feeling into your everyday relationships. It's funny that when we receive a compliment, we like someone more. Obviously, if somebody gives us a compliment, we like them. But it also works the other way as well. When we give someone a compliment, we also start to like them more. When we compliment someone, we automatically put a spotlight on their good qualities. And the more and more we put a spotlight on good qualities, the more we start to like someone. the more we start to develop that connection, that rapport, and ultimately as you're doing it enough, especially with your romantic partner, that intimacy is going to come in as well. So folks, don't let the intimacy die in your relationship. Don't let it wallow, don't let it wither. Keep that intimacy strong. And anytime you feel that it is dipping, you're not quite as intimate as you want to be, maybe you've been spending too much time away from each other, maybe you've been spending time with each other, but not focused on each other, start to bring some of these techniques in. And it's amazing, after just a short time, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, bringing these practices in, that intimacy starts to spark again. Because the intimacy never goes away. You just have to work on keeping it lit. It's like a fire, if you keep on giving it fuel, it will burn strong. If you don't pay attention to it, it's going to wither, it's going to fade to embers, and it will be all that more difficult to reignite at a later date. So folks, there are 3 tips for intimacy in your romantic relationships. I hope you've enjoyed listening to these lessons today. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out each and every day and take the opportunity to write the story that you want for yourself. I'll speak to you soon. David.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be. Because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.